Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today's episode is going to be part one in this channel's introduction to SQL, Microsoft SQL Server. And if you're unfamiliar with what SQL is or SQL, however you've heard it, I'll probably call it SQL through most of the tutorial. But it's essentially just Microsoft and a few other companies make a similar solution, but it's a database tool for storing data as well as pulling data out and then manipulating it into reports and all sorts of usable formats. So if you're an enterprise or a business developer, you can get one that's Azure linked and backed up on the cloud, or you can get a local SQL Server iteration and just host it all locally. But if you're an independent developer or just building kind of software on your own, you can get either a developer or express version of SQL, and you can download it and get started with it completely for free from Microsoft's website. You just go to SQL Server downloads. So that's pretty cool that they offer it for free. You download it right here. And then one of the first things that installs when you install SQL is also the installation center. And initially you're just going to be installing SQL as a standalone, but then I would recommend adding the install SQL Server reporting services as well as the SQL Server management tools, particularly if you're going to be doing local development. So the SQL Server management tools are really useful for actually creating tables manually and running some queries locally. And then the SQL Server reporting services is a useful tool for actually reporting data back, and you can share that with like a corporate through web links and VPNs and stuff. So those two tools are super useful, and most of this tutorial series we're going to be doing inside of the Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. So first thing that you're going to do after you've installed this is just open it up, and it's going to load in with some defaults. And if you need help actually like setting a server name and getting started with that, we can do that in a later series. But for now I'm leaving everything as the default just so we can get rolling. And so the first thing you need to do typically with SQL is create some data, because from then on you'll be manipulating it and interacting with it in different ways. So if you open up your folder structure and go into databases and system databases, you can either create a new one, or I just use the built-in master database. And I created a table already that we're going to use for this example. But when you create a table, you go to new table, you right click on the tables folder, you go to new and then table, and it's going to take you to a loadout structure that looks very much like this. So it'll give you column name and then data type. And if you think about a table, that's really all you need to know, because this is not the data inside of the table. You're creating the table parameters. So for this in particular, I've created a sample table that's letting you track information about an employee. And I just have the employee name and then their position at the company in here as two fields to start. And so that's how you create the table. You just give this column name something descriptive. So I'll add another one that says salary. And you can see I've made the employee's name and the position something called a varchar with 50 characters as a limit. Varchar in SQL just means variable characters. And it's basically code for this could be anything: numbers, letters, special characters like exclamation marks or asterisks. That can all go in a varchar. But then if you hit the drop down, if you're ever not sure if SQL supports that data type or not, you can see all of the ones that they have. So they have integers and then big integers, which are like double integers if you're familiar with dints. Bits and binary. So like Boolean characters, you can get just the date or date time. You can have decimals or floats, and then you can actually pass in even things like pictures, images, integers, text, numeric. But really the most common ones you're going to use are probably going to be floats, integers, varchars, because even though they have a text and it's just better to use a varchar, because if there's ever numbers or special characters in there, a varchar will still catch it where like text wouldn't. So that's my rant on that. But for salary, we'll just make it a float, because you never know, it could have decimal points or something. And then the other nice thing is, once you've saved a table, you can go back and modify it at any time. It's not just on creation, just by right-clicking it and going to design. But then to actually view just raw data, you can either select the top 1,000 rows, where it'll show you 1,000 rows of recent data, or you can edit the top 200 rows and you can actually interact with your data inside of there. And these are just defaults. We'll go through how to select and modify specific data a little bit later. But for now, we'll see these 3 employees I just totally made up. Jim, Pam, and Michael, and their positions in sales. We'll change Pam's from recruiting to reception. And Michael is in management. So let's give them some salaries. Let's say Jim makes $45,000, Pam makes $30,000, and let's say Michael's bringing in the big bucks, $60,000. So right there, we just went through and physically added data into this table. And typically what you're going to do in SQL is you're going to have this connected to outside software and use SQL as an ODBC, an outside database connection. So you'd ordinarily have routines that are putting data into these tables externally. We'll get into how to actually do that later in the series. But for now, we've made our first table. We've put some data in it. Let's go ahead and take a look at creating our first query to actually access this data, okay? So you go up to New Query. And basically, query is the structured text for SQL. And pretty much anytime you're pulling data from tables, it's going to go in the format of select and then from. So I'll just punch both of those in there. But we actually have to add some data here. So to start, I'm going to use the star, which is SQL's little indicator for everything. So I'm saying select everything from, and I need to tell them what table I want to pull from. And I'm going to say specifically the employee table. And when I run this, bam, you see at the bottom of the table we get all of our employees, their positions, and their salaries. And we get Jim sales salary, Pam reception salary. There you go. But so the select from is a good tool to basically grab everything. And then let's just go one further. What you can also do in your select statement is say what you actually want. So you can specify columns inside of the table. So now if I say that we want just the employee names from the table, we get Jim, Pam, and Michael right there. Okay, so select and from is basically how you get data out of a table. You say what you want, and then you say where it is. And the last piece to this, and the last thing I'll cover in this video, is select from and where is usually the third piece. So now let's say we want to select all employees from the employee table who are in sales. Okay, so let's say where position, and with text you can use an equal sign and then say sales, or you can use a few things unique to strings. So I'll go ahead and run this so you can see we just get Jim because he's the only person in our table that's got a job in sales. But another thing you can do with strings is say like sales. Okay, so if I run this again, we still just get Jim. But if I were to change our condition to reception, we just get Pam. Okay, so that's pretty cool. Now let's say we want to actually look at where salary is greater than, and we'll say $40,000. Okay, so what's this? Did I not call it salary? I sure did. It's like the table hasn't refreshed. Oh, there we go. I guess I didn't refresh my I guess I didn't refresh my tables after saving them, so I was querying old data. But silly things like that always happen. But then, so now I'm looking where salary is greater than $40,000 a year. We get Jim and Michael based on data that we showed before. And then you can also select multiple columns. And so we are actually seeing the employee and the salary that we called out. So this is pretty cool. The basics of SQL queries are usually select, where you give the conditions of what you want to pull in, from where, that's the table, and then where is your actual conditions to filter data out. So this has been a quick little crash course on SQL. We'll get into a lot more of the specifics and advanced things you can do with this database in future videos. But for now, if you have any questions about anything you saw here today, go ahead and let me know in the comments. And if you found this or anything else on the channel useful, I'd really appreciate a like and a subscribe. It helps the channel out a lot. And as always, good luck with your programming, and thanks for watching. Thanks. Bye.